It's always a good opportunity to share with the community. So let's have at it.
So yeah, Wade, we're going live here. I'm hitting the go live button on Facebook. I just hit the recording on Zoom. We're gonna record this thing on Zoom, and then I'm gonna put it up onto the Kong Family Show YouTube channel, and get you a link to it so you can. And I'll also get you the Zoom link, the direct Zoom link, and then I'll also get you the YouTube link.
That's good.
So you've got them both. You know, I kind of like the idea of keeping both because, you know, YouTube's been deleting a lot of really important stuff as of late. And so, you know, I figure like the more truth we put out, the more chance there's going to be that they're going to delete it. And
You got it.
and so I want to try and do everything I can to get the copies of whatever we're doing, get them in other people's hands, so that they can be saved to hard drives and whatever. That way they can't just go ahead and delete the truth on us, you know, because we're all about that. And dude, I remember meeting you actually in the bathroom. It was two, 3 years ago down in Vegas. We didn't really talk that much or anything, but you know, your reputation precedes you where you go, and you know, you incredibly valuable part of what I call the Kong family. I say, because it's called Kangen water. It's not called Kangen water. It's called Kangen water. And my sweetie, she insists that Kong is a girl, not a boy. And and I asked her why, and she said, "Well, just listen to that voice in the machine. That's a girl. That's not a boy's voice. That's a girl's voice." I said, "Well, hey, fair enough. I guess Kong is a girl." And you know, but anybody that has a Kangen water machine, they're part of the Kong family. And I always say, "How do you think that gorilla got so big? He's out there in the jungle drinking Kong's water from the base of the waterfall." You know, because we know as Kangen water distributors, we know that this water is found in nature. It's found in different areas that are not exactly the easiest place in the world to get to. And it's a heck of a lot easier for us to get a machine and put it on our countertop. And then we've got the same thing that gorilla had that got him so big.
Hey, I'm gonna jump off the video real quick and get my Facebook Live share going on too, so I can share this with all my contingent. So go ahead, talk amongst yourselves. I'm getting a bit beklempt up in here.
All right.
So Wade, brother, I got to tell you, man, I was really super impressed with that live you did last week. All those questions.
Yeah.
What a great bunch of questions. And at some point here, I would love it if you would expand on some more of that. But seeing how this is the first time you've ever been on the show, and ultimately what my goal was when I started this Kong Family Show was to share stories. And the reason I wanted to share stories is because it was a story that changed my life. My buddy Tim McGaffin was posting about it all the time on Facebook, and I just thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. Water, this is just stupid. You know, I just laughed at him and gave him likes and moved on. Never read anything, never looked at anything. And then one day, the lovely, amazing, incredible, life-changing angel, Brittany Dykes, she shared her story. And I actually clicked on that little see more button. And at the end of reading her story, I went, whoa, okay, hold on a second. And I called Tim up and said, next time you're up here in Salt Lake, bring me some information about this Kong's water, you know? And I started calling it that for some reason before I even knew anything about it. And anyway, he brought me up a video. He brought me up Daniel DiMacauley's live speech, Answers for a Thirsty World. My sweetie and I, we sat down and watched that weekend. And at the end of it, my sweetie said, if you buy half, I'll buy half. And that's the end, you know, that's the beginning of it all. And so the thing I look at is that it was a story that changed my life so drastically. And so my goal is to share stories. And so the first thing I would like to ask you, and it's the same thing I ask everybody. I ask them, how, when, and why did you get involved with Kangen water? And were you a skeptic like I was?
Yeah, so I'll answer the last question first. Yes, I was a skeptic. First and foremost, I've been in the nutrition industry, athletic world, exercise physiology, virtually my whole adult life. And I was exposed to this information back in 2007. A person I knew reached out to me and said there was this new product coming to Canada, and they wanted me to kind of go at it. I wasn't really interested in going. I get exposed to products and services all the time. Being
When you're a world-class bodybuilder, that would imagine that happens quite often.
yeah, I'm hit up with the product service thing, and virtually every week, and I have been probably for the last 20 years. And I love that. Don't get me wrong, but I've seen a lot of stories. I've seen a lot of pills, a lot of potions, a lot of lotions, and a lot of motions. And most of it is just kind of you develop a little bit of discernment that automatically comes up. So what I would say is, and this is a really important, so as I tell you the story, I'm also going to share some insights for distributors, particularly if they're going after a person of influence or a person in the health industry that might be exposed to, you know, a lot of different options. And I was skeptic, but the person was persistent in saying, no, you got to check this out. This is different. And I'm like, okay, I'll get to that. And they kept following up and following up. And finally I was like, okay, I'll just go check this out to shut this guy up. And I think being that positive, proactive communication, and I'm really glad that the person did persist. And then I went to the demonstration and I was gung ho and I was going to take this person out. But I tried the water. I'm pretty tuned into my body, and I noticed something different when I first had it. And from that point, I was interested. Then I found out about the price and the marks. I didn't want anything to do with the marketing side of it. I didn't want anything to do with the business. I thought the price was exorbitant. But the people persist, and I did like the water. And I was running a holistic health clinic at the time in Vancouver. And I said, well, I'm going to do my own experiment. And I would encourage people in that situation, said, I understand your skepticism. I understand that you might feel this way, but are you open to doing a real legitimate scientific experiment on yourself and exposing yourself to the water for a sufficient period of time so that you can get past the hype, get past the marketing, get past the biases, and actually get in your own experiential reality and see what happens in your own body? Would you be willing and open to try that? So I was, and the results were significant. I was able to recover better from my training. I noticed a delayed onset muscle soreness. I noticed recovery had improved, and I was like, okay, there is a distinct advantage to athletes by using this water. And so I was very, very clear about that. Came back and now the people who were promoting this to me, they were very aggressive on me, and I literally, I aggressively pushed back on them. I mean, when I mean aggressively, colorful language, accusations, you name it. And these people stayed firm. They did not let me, and that was part of my challenge to them too. I wanted to see, when I'm going to get into business with somebody, if I'm going to work with somebody, or I'm going to have someone that's going to be attached to my name, to my product, I need to know that they're going to be able to stand up to some adversity, stand up to some pushback, some attacks. Those are going to happen, because if you're going to go out there and market something or be in business, it's not for the faint of heart. You're going to take some hits, you're going to take some arrows, and you need to know that that person's going to be able to withstand that. And if you are the type of person that crumbles at the first sense of somebody's objections, you need to go back to the drawing board, get some sales training, and get your belief system up and get your defense mechanisms up in order that you can attract the type of people that are really going to grow your business. And that's, fortunately, I found out through that grilling that I was with the right people. And even though I wasn't into the business side at the time, I did start referring people to them, and they were doing demonstrations, and I kept referring people, and all of a sudden these checks came in and start coming in. And after that, I was like, well, I went and did a whole piece where I came back in bodybuilding, went to the world championships again, proving the results. The story kind of got viral, and the next thing you know, I was speaking on stages and stuff. And I thought I better learn about the business. And it's been nothing but six figures every year plus ever from the get-go. So I was really fortunate and lucky in the situation I got with the right people, and they were tough enough to withstand my skepticism.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
You wanted to make sure, hey, Jay John, I got to say, you wanted to make sure that they were the pig and not the chicken in the ham and eggs breakfast, right, Wade? I mean, the pig, he's committed. His head goes on the chopping block. The chicken just squirts out a couple of ass apples and they mosey about their business to go pecking grain again. That's the difference between involved and committed. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing is the type of people that can really grow your business, they probably have other things going on as it is. So I find the people that are easiest to commit are oftentimes the people that don't last. And the people that are more reluctant to commit are oftentimes that way because they know once they decide that they're going to commit to something, they're going to go see it all the way through. And they understand that there are going to be obstacles. They're not operating from the pie in the sky type of mentality, because regardless of, everybody starts the same in this business, which is great. You have the same opportunity. You got all the background. You got a 45-year-old billion-dollar brand that has got the manufacturing capability, the distribution capability, the operational capability, the servicing capability. All that stuff is built in with the price of your machine. But that means you still got to go out there and share that and be able to do that in an effective way, and to be able to overcome the adversities that happen at every stage of growing your business, both externally and internally. As people are attracted to your organization or exposed to your organization, and also from internally of all the nuances that happen inside your organization.
Word.
Yeah, I love that. I'm wondering if you might expand a little bit, because, you know, I don't want to tell this because I don't exactly know your background, but I'm wondering if you might indulge our audience with what your background is. So I know you're into you've been into bodybuilding, that kind of thing, but I don't know all that much about it, and I'd like to learn myself exactly what your background is. And then once you get into that, what kind of an effect has this made? Because I know there's people out there, like I got a really good old friend of mine that's a wrestling coach, and you know, he and I've been wrestling for years and years and years, and I'm trying to work with him on this and help him understand how important this could be for his wrestlers and that kind of thing. And you being a professional athlete who utilizes this technology, what would you have to say to somebody in that position?
Yeah, great question. So for those who don't know, my background was grew up on the East Coast of Canada. 15 years old, my parents moved to a rural area. Three things happened that changed the course of my life. Number one, being in a rural area gave me a lot of time to reflect and not a lot of time with my friends. I was 5 miles up a dirt road to my nearest neighbor, and an hour bus ride to school each way. So, and 15 minutes to get to the road, to get to the bus each way. So it was 2.5 hours on a bus, a lot of reflection and a lot of time by myself. Second thing, my sister was diagnosed with cancer at the time. She was 4 years my senior. I watched her go through the medical model before she died at the age of 22, which was obviously gave me a couple insights in, number one, your health isn't a guarantee. And number one, your life isn't a guarantee. And so most people don't get exposed to that till much later in life. And that had a big impact. I went on to study exercise physiology at the University of New Brunswick. After 4 years left there, and moved on into, it was a collage of separated, compartmentalized information. And so I realized that although I had this background, I didn't have any unified way. At that time, my bodybuilding career had just kind of begun. I'd done one competition, and I fell in love with that. As I got out of hockey, my hockey career ended, and I got more into that sport because I needed to channel my energy somewhere. And so I started learning under various mentors in the health and wellness and performance field. I worked in every stage of the nutrition industry, from being an athlete that represented product, a sponsored athlete, to actually working in nutrition stores, to actually working in the warehouse, working in retail, doing customization. Eventually that led into being a personal trainer, and also opening my own retail store. And as my bodybuilding career got successful, and keep in mind, it was 10 years before I won my first contest. I had terrible genetics. So it wasn't really got out for it, but I was a determined guy. I was either too stupid or too stubborn to know when to quit. and eventually got some success in that. And after 16 years, got to, won a bunch of national championships and went to the World Championships Mr. Universe contest. That led to a crisis afterwards in the health thing. I met a doctor. He started teaching about how to rebuild my body from the inside out. I mentored under him, started an online bodybuilding company called Freaky Big Naturally with my business partner, Matt Gallant. We ended up building a worldwide business through the World Wide Web. I moved to Panama, worked out of there for a number of years. And then there was a downturn in the market. We had some operational issues that, we grew faster than we had capabilities as young entrepreneurs, and that happens. There was a reset of our business. And during that time, I lost a lot of the income that I was doing. And that's when I actually got exposed to the Kangen water business. Took that on. I love the system. Once I realized the advantages of the system as a business owner, I was able to quickly, get myself back to a six-figure a year income, which allowed me to kind of retool my primary business, which is still onwards and going today, a company called Bioptimizer. So we build products in the digestive health market. So we've been doing that. Now we've been in business for 17 years, and I've been a Kangen distributor since 2007, and it's been an awesome ride. So that's the whole story in a nutshell.
Man, what a great story. I love that. And, what do you, when it comes to like other athletes out there, I'd imagine that you've probably introduced this water to a lot of athletes. What kind of stories do you have to tell about athletes? And like, for example, something that I could, because one of the things I'm going to do is get this video once this is all put up and everything, and I can get this to my buddy. I'm going to get it to him and say, hey man, you should check this out. I hope you'll get the time to check it out. But what, how can this benefit a wrestler, or how did it benefit you as a bodybuilder? What kind of stuff did you see? What kind of advantages did you get out of it? That you can attribute to the fact that you were drinking this electrolyzed water?
Well, right out of the gate, actually what had happened, I'll tell you a funny story. What happened is when I went to the World Championships and I saw an improved recovery. That was the big thing, and the reduction of delayed onset muscle soreness, which is a factor in how often and frequently you could train. And I was able to compress training and recovery into an expedited amount of time, which if you can train more often and more frequently, you can increase your improvement. So I saw that right off the bat. Now, we didn't have any physiological evidence. Dr. Horst wasn't part of the process where he was able to actually demonstrate that, medically. And I wrote, what happened is someone had heard about my story and had put it in had basically misquoted me and put it in a marketing brochure that was being distributed for Enagic distributors in 2008. So I got wind of this and found out who the person was, and I called them up and I said, hey, we've got a few problems here. Number one, you used my picture without my acknowledgement or saying that you could. Number two, you've misquoted me. So you're misleading the thing. And I said, number three, you got a wonderful brochure, but if my business partner finds out of that, you're probably going to deal with some heavy lawsuits. He's a bit of a pit bull on that side of things. And so what we need to do is to come to some sort of term where we can set the record straight for people that we're providing accurate information. And so I laid out the challenges early on in that first in a non-aggressive format. And I think anytime you have problems with people or challenges that come up, you need to take that neutral position as opposed to trying to hammer your position and open up the door to find out what the opportunity is. And I said, here's what I'm willing to do. I said, you got a great brochure, and I see what it is. Let's first and foremost, let's set the record straight and get the new ones worked out properly. Number two, in order for me to do that, I need to produce my own book so I can set the record straight for the athletic world. And so he agreed to do that. And I said, I'll just take a small royalty. You can produce it, distribute it, do whatever you want. And I'll take a royalty for my time. And that's it. So that's what we did. We created what every athlete needs to know about restructured ionized water. And so that's what we did. And little did I know that that would really take off and become one of the go-to information packets that got distributed amongst distributors everywhere. And the next thing you know, I was getting requests to go around and speak on some of the Super Saturdays and some of the bigger events. And back there, they used to do a lot of big events. So suddenly I was thrust into that role, and it was fun. And I got to meet a lot of people and answer a lot of questions. So to go back to the specifics, I found that it reduced delayed onset muscle soreness. That's a big one. So the achy soreness that happens from hardcore training, particularly in weight training or, explosive based activities. Number two was there was an increase in, I would say, go-go juice or energy. In other words, is that I was able to hit levels of training volume and frequency that I wasn't able to before. So I said, there's some sort of antioxidant effect and there's some sort of energy boosting mechanism here that isn't based on the caloric model. And so we have a caloric model, and if you go down to the science of it, there's electron covalent transfer. You're actually burning electrons. Everything gets converted to electricity. And I predicted that this would catch fire in the athletic world back then. And inadvertently then ended up doing some videos and some audios. And then I got introduced to Shan Stratton. And then we did a Bigger, Faster, Stronger CD with a naturopathic doctor back at the time who was part of the project, then Dr. Dave Carpenter. And that got even more traction and so on and so forth. So it was just kind of snowballed over time. And then the beautiful thing was I was at an event in California, and we were waiting in line, I think at the buffet table or something, and I struck up a conversation with a fellow. I didn't know who he was, and it was Horst Filzer, who we just had an instant connection, an instant rapport. Sometimes you meet those people, and I love Horst. He's an amazing person, and he had seen some benefits to himself, and he put his credibility to horsepower intellectually and his medical background and his ability to do experiments. And then later on, about 10 years later, he ended up proving what I had known anecdotally, that this product improves energy production at the mitochondria and serves as an electrical-based antioxidant and reduces delayed onset muscle soreness from training. Those three components that I experienced experientially, but hadn't been proven in a defendable study in humans, which he was able to do at the university, at one of the universities in Oregon, I think at Klamath Falls. And so that was a beautiful thing. And that changed the game for a lot of people. And so when you're dealing with professional athletes, you have to realize that they're getting exposed to a lot of stuff. And the problem is, I think distributors come at it not from how you can actually benefit the athlete. You're hoping to benefit the athlete to boost your self-confidence, your self-esteem, or your believability, or your credibility. And I can tell you, when you come at the athletes or the professionals with that type of attitude, they can smell it, and you're not going to get your foot inside the door. And I think that's the problem that people have when they're going after those particular people. They're not looking at it from an honest, how about you? They're looking at it from, how about me? And I think that's a mistake that everybody makes.
So what kind of advice would you give to our distributors out there that have athletes, or, like in my case with this friend of mine, he's a longtime friend of mine. I went to high school with him. And so maybe it's a smidge different than the way it is when you're meeting somebody that's an athlete that you don't really know. But what kind of advice would you give to me or to anybody else in regards to, how they should go about trying to approach?
Well, first and foremost, you need sales skills. And I think the biggest deficiency in most people in the Enagic business or any business right now is they don't invest the time, energy, and money to understand the sales process. And I'm a bigger believer in, if I was to go backwards in time, I would train distributors on salesmanship. Most people have trouble asking for the sale. Most people see one objection as something that's going to blow up. They don't know how to overcome or circumvent objections. They don't know how to front objections before they come up. You have to realize if you're going to reach out and communicate the value of this product, you're going to have anywhere from 3 to 7 legitimate objections that you need to be able to know how to handle. And with an athlete, you might even have more so, because as soon as you come after them and start saying, oh, hey, I got this product that's going to make a difference for you, you just get categorized in the thousands of other people that came after them already. You just put yourself in a box that's really hard to come after.
Right.
So the first step that you need to do is you need to front the objections. Hey, Bob. Hey, Mary. Hey, Bob. I know you get this a million times, right? I know everybody's coming after you for all this stuff, and I don't want to be categorized as one of those people, right? I respect your time. I respect your profession, and I don't know anything about what it is that you do. I'm a fan. I'm an enthusiast. But the reality is I'm not an expert. However, I have recently heard that so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so are using this product. I've seen that, Tom Brady has got one of these machines in his videos on TB12. I've seen Shan Stratton, this nutritionist to the pros, are using this with some of his personal clients and some pretty important people. And there's some people in my community that are using this with various athletes. Now, I don't know about your profession, but have you heard about this particular product? Not, hey, I need this. You ask them, have you heard about it? And they're going to tell you yes or no. Well, let me ask you a question. What's your opinion of it? Do you think this works, or do you think it's effective? And then they go, well, yes, I do, or no, I don't. Or, well, why is that? So you got to start asking questions as opposed to promoting your piece first, because a salesman isn't about ramming things down people's throat and telling them, you need this, you got to have this. If you don't get this, beat it. I don't need your advice to tell me how to run a 100-meter sprint, or how to catch a football, or how to, jump through the air as a ballet. Like, what the hell do you know? That's how you're going to come at it as an athlete. Everybody's got advice. Everybody's the armchair quarterback. Go out there on the field and try and do it. It's a whole different game. And I think people make some very false assumptions, and they don't ask questions. And so by keeping those open-ended inquiries, as opposed to trying to ram your promotion down, and then say, hey, you know what? I know you don't have a lot of time. Would you be interested in just doing a little experiment on this? Because these guys said it good, and I don't know if it'll help you or not, but if it does, I'd be willing to provide you the opportunity to try it, and then give me the feedback if it's something that you'd be interested in. Would you be open to giving that a shot? And if they say no, say, well, let me ask you a question, right? So you got to expect there's going to be some objections. So as soon as they give you the no, you need to understand how to have that. So, hey, let me ask you a question, right? You're training to be the best that you can perform, right? Yes. And you're looking for every single edge that you can get inside of your profession, right? And I go, yes. And there's probably a number of things that you have tried that didn't work, and probably a few things that you tried that did, right? Yes. Well, what are some of the things that did work in your thing that you were surprised about? And they'll tell you a couple things. Well, you know what? That's why I wanted to share this with you, because based on everything that I've learned from these pros and these professionals and these experts and the scientific validation of this, I think this might be one of these things. And wouldn't it make sense to give this a shot? It's a no-cost trial for you to kind of experiment with it. Because what if this was an edge that got you a breakthrough? Wouldn't it be worth trying that experiment, especially when it's not going to cost you anything on your side?
Yeah.
What's the guy left to say?
Yeah.
Brother, that's brilliant. I love it.
Right? And then if they say, no, I'm just not willing to do it, I'll say, okay, great. I get it. I understand. I don't want to be categorized. I don't want to bother your time. By the way, do you have anybody that you know that's on one of your teams or one of your competitors that you would like to refer me to? because I'm gonna run this experiment with them because I'm pretty certain that this is gonna draw a lot of value to it. So, who is someone on your team that you'd like to try it, or who do you think is your biggest competitor? Because I'm gonna go try with them and see if they want that edge.
Yeah, that's a little stickler right there, huh?
Yeah. So now you take the authority position, and if when they push back on you that you're coming, you have to remember that you've got the proven commodity. Now, in order to get that kind of posturing, you're going to need salesmanship and you're going to need belief in that. So to keep your belief up, you always have to be, it's like you go to church every week. Okay. If you're in sales, you have a sales training every single week. You're going over that process and you got to be doing presentations yourself, because every time you do the presentation yourself, you're selling yourself, and you're selling your teammates, and you're selling that. And when you first start out, most people, I would say that they're going after these people early on, and they're coming at these people and they're not prepared. It's like, hey, you know what? I just watched the UFC this weekend. I took a boxing class. I think I'm ready to jump in the cage match next weekend because there's a local event going on, and you're going to go in and you're going to get killed. It's the same thing if you are thinking that you're just going to take this product and enter into a sales situation and not get killed. You're fooling yourself. And I think we do a disservice by not properly preparing. So you want to come in with your senior distributor who has some experience on this in order to make that sale early on and to handle the smoothness and go through those objections.
Yeah.
The other thing is too, if you are coming with that more senior person, shut up and observe. And that seems harsh, but oftentimes what'll happen is that experienced salesperson is taking them down to questions, and then you want to be the eager beaver and jump in and you start blowing the sale, or you start doing that. Shut up, observe, and watch. And that's going to be the toughest thing to do as a new distributor, because you're so excited and you're so pumped up about it, and it's making a difference in your life, and you've got visions of grandeur and money and health and all this sort of stuff, and you're on a mission and you're coming out. And the reality is that's not where your prospect is. You got to meet them where they're at and lead them through the sales process, as opposed to taking a hammer and just smashing them with your visions, your dreams, and your experiences.
Right. Yeah. People are interested in themselves. Hey, Sean, I'm wondering if you've got any questions or comments
No,
at this point.
It's funny because everything he just said was something I did exact opposite of. For one, I didn't have a senior distributor. I was kind of on an island, man. The guy that sold me mine was kind of a network marketing whore, if you will. And he just did everything and anything, he just was dating all the girls. He couldn't find one to marry, you dig? So he disappeared shortly thereafter, and I found myself puking on people like I had some kind of virus or bacteria infection. I was just blah, 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 blah. Because I knew what I was talking about. Oh, yeah, geez, you guys, but I didn't even ask them if they gave a crap twice. I didn't even qualify them at all. So I had to go through this whole thing because I wasn't really the most network marketing savvy cat. I was a counselor, coach. I did all that stuff, and you'd have them in your environment. So once I started to kind of learn that there's a real similarity between that, you want to help a kid with his problems. You got to ask the kid what his problems are. Kid's having a problem with understanding some concept of the offense I'm trying to run. I have to ask him where he's hung up. And so I got beyond the excitement and, that, and, it's just been a constant, process of learning. But again, being able to meet guys like Wade and Shan and these guys over the years, what I didn't have locally, I went and found these cats on a national, when we go to our global trainings and such. And it made a huge difference in terms of just the success I started to have, so I was just really thankful for that. So no, you're right on there. I mean, it's just a matter of learning and understanding what you don't know and what they don't know as well, really, because if they don't know, the key is asking questions. So, instead of running around like a 13-year-old figuring out what this new hard thing is in my pants, that I'm completely unaware of, but I don't know how to handle it. I learned to be a little savvier, you know.
Yeah, Wade, gosh, I love that information. What a incredibly powerful message that you've given us today, and I sure appreciate it. You know, I before we shift gears, because I kind of want to shift gears a little bit, because
Sure.
as everybody around knows, there's something going on right now in our world that I was really kind of hoping to get you to, you know, expand on a little bit, your thoughts, what your, you know, because you did a video last week that I watched the whole thing and I was just like, wow, what an incredible message that was. And I'd really love to reach out, see if I can get this awesome sauce dude on the show and get him to expand this a little bit or talk about it, or, you know, maybe even, you know, what has happened since you put that video out. Maybe talk to people a little bit about that. But before we get into that, I want to do something that is part of what I do with this show. Is my goal is not only to share stories, but it's also to get people who resonate with each other to get together with each other. Because people, there's going to be people that are going to be listening to this show as time goes by, and they're listening to what you've said today, and they're going to be like, man, this dude, I want to hook up with this guy. I want to go get one of these water machines from him. I want to learn from him. I want to work with him. How do they get in touch with you? I like to give all my people the opportunity to give whatever kind of contact information they want to give out. That's completely up to them. You can give all your information or none of it. It's up to you. But I always love to give a little section of time for everybody to tell everybody who they are, how do they get a hold of you? You know, if they want to work with Wade Lightheart, they want to get a machine or whatever, they want to learn about your bio optimizers, they want to get your book, whatever. How do they do it?
They want to get this CD here. Yeah, that's right.
That's great. Thanks, guys. Well, you can reach out to me. My contact information is just wadelightheart@gmail if you want a personal email or whatever. The next thing is if they want to reach my company, bioptimizers.com/Sean Wetzel. That'll get you into. I have a 12-week awesome health course, and in that awesome health course, it's a 12-week course, or you can do it in a weekend if you want to just hammer through it. It's 5 to 15-minute videos where I kind of explain everything I learned over 30 years in a sequential format around of how do you actually have what we call biologically optimized health. And so all the tools, tricks, experts, and things that I've learned over the last 30 years to kind of optimize healthy, high performance is captured inside of that, so that you're spending your time, your effort, and your money in a proper way. I will also share with people, I have 2 specific videos inside that sequence, which you can just go right off the bat, which is on water, specifically the different types of water, what they're all about. And also I do another video that is specific to Kangen water. And, you know, I do a demonstration, and feel free for anybody that wants to have those or utilize those, they can share that and use that as an information or a way to explain the demonstration or explain the nuances of what I think makes the Kangen water so powerful. And also, I also explain a very key point. This is something I would like everybody to take away. And that is, water contains 440,000 information storage panels. I would like for everybody in the Kangen business to think of water as a storage device. And this is going to eliminate all the conjecture around whose water is better. So if you would equate water to a DVD, okay? Now on that DVD, a blank DVD, I can put a sports documentary, I can put a horror film, I can put a romance novel, I can put a scientific documentary, I could put a comedy. I could store that information on that water, on that CD, and say, hey, put this in the player, that's your human body, and I'm going to see this scenario. Water is the exact same thing. And the Kangen water machine puts a story into that water, if so to speak, just like I could store an information story on that. And so when other people are talking about this type of water or that type of water or this type of water, what happens is they're creating a polarized conversation. They're comparing horror films to sports shows. And guess what? Everybody's right and everybody's wrong. So the way to get past those kind of echo chamber debates about my water's better than your water is like, hey, we have a way of programming this water that is really unique and produces these type of results without taking away what somebody else is doing. And by providing that information, if you're looking to have these type of results, we've been able to demonstrate with scientific proof in human trials to actually demonstrate that we're able to do this, this, and this. And our product happens to solve a number of different areas, which is, it's good for your health, it's good for the environment, and if you like sharing that message, it can be good for your finances. So the bottom line, if you're interested in any one of those three things, then guess what? Probably a good idea to take a look at that. Now, I'm not here to say that your water or this water is bad and mine's better. What I'm hearing to say is you're programming the water in a very unique and interesting way. And I'd like to learn about that if you're willing to take a look at what I'm doing, and you can learn about how I'm programming the water. And once you enter the conversation, you're creating a higher framework that both people can now come together and meet. If you're trying to go like this, everybody just gets bolstered and and then it's, I'm hating this guy, you're hating this guy. And this divisive type of mentality is one of the biggest issues that's happening in social media today, because mathematical algorithms are putting you in echo chambers. Marketing materials are putting you in echo chambers with people who think like you, act like you, and believe like you. And unfortunately, what happens is the most aggressive or loudest person within this community now becomes the de facto tribal leader and starts warring with the other tribes of the other component. And that division is what separates humanity. That's what's caused all the pain and suffering throughout human history. And with, you know, nearly 8 billion people on the planet, it's about time, and thousands of years of conflict to demonstrate that that doesn't work. The way to overcome that is to frame things in a new way of conversation, which is connecting people as opposed to causing this disbursement of ideas and values. So as Jordan Peterson, the great psychologist who came to fame a few years ago in Canada, says, is, you know, listen to other people as if they have something to say that you don't know about. So listen to that person and say, you know, that, you know, they saying, hey, well, we've got this water. And I'm like, well, that's a very interesting conversation. Tell me about that. And then you can introduce the concept after. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're able to program the water in this, this, and this. And the person says, yes, that's the way I'm able to do that. I was like, great. And he said, you know what? I got something that's interesting too, because we're programming the water this way. And isn't that interesting? So now you're in a conversation that allows both people to share what they have to share and enter into a collaborative effort, and then you can demonstrate. And when it comes right down to it, overall, I think with this product and the service and the system that we're able to offer, it's certainly of an extraordinary value to the large majority of people. And there's a small majority that it's not for, and that's okay too. But that changes the dynamic and creates a lot less conflict in your life and a lot better communication. And if you really want to get deep into that, you can read the book Nonviolent Communication, of how to feed back a person's positions and requests and you know, components, so that you can accurately communicate with them in a way that's non-confrontational.
Well, it's more
I think that's a book I need to read.
Well,
wow,
Wade,
Wade.
because that's exceptionally relevant.
Go ahead, Tom.
Sorry,
I was just going to say that it's just exceptionally relevant today with all the approaches to this situation we're in. And this situation is absolutely multifold. I mean, it's don't do this, do that, maybe do this only under these circumstances. You do this on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do this on Saturday, Sunday. It's just crazy. So there's a lot of different polarity all bouncing around. And I think everything you're talking about right now is critical moving forward, because people will post something on, they don't want, all these governors are starting to open things up a little bit. And I've got people just crapping their pants going, it's too early, and they're freaking out, and you got other people going, oh, buck up, pull up your britches. And it's just back and forth. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's division. It's one-upsmanship. It never solves any problem. It never addresses anything on a communication, a relativity, a relatability level. It's divisive. So I think everything you're talking about with respect to this really applies to our current situation today,
Yeah, what a perfect segue into shifting gears over into that incredible video you did last week, Wade. I'd love to, watching you do the video was one thing, but now having you here in the house where we can actually ask you a little bit about it. One thing I really, really loved about that video is how you just kept asking one significant question after another. What kind of feedback have you gotten from that? What kind of lashback? What kind of, what would you like to tell us about that from where that went? Because for me, I was super impressed with what you did.
I got virtually no negative feedback, which was kind of shocking.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why is I wasn't taking a position. And I was inviting people into a conversation to address, I think, something that we all feel viscerally. And that is, there seems to be an incredible amount of conflicting information in regards to, quote unquote, this pandemic. Okay? And I think we all feel that. We all feel that something's not right. And I had a spiritual teacher, his name's Dr. David Hawkins, and he wrote a number of books, Power versus Force, Truth versus Falsehood, and an incredible array of books, the Pathway of Letting Go, Surrender, the Pathway of Letting Go, different things. And in order to get to a higher level of awareness, we have to surrender the positionalities that we might have. Because all of us are basing our opinions, our theories, our choices on a limited amount of information. That's always the case. We can never know everything about the subject. In fact, the more that you dive into a subject, the more you find out how little we actually know. And that's the case it is today. So we have a wealth of information and very little wisdom. Now, wisdom comes from asking questions. And Albert Einstein was quoted as once saying that you cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created it.
Yeah.
And he also said that he didn't want to fill his brain up with facts and information because that led nowhere. And that he wanted to actually activate imagination. And he came to E equals MC squared by imagining himself riding on a light beam. Okay, so think about that. So here's one of the most celebrated intellectuals in history who is talking about the power of imagination. And then you can go back to reading persons such as Aristotle. And if you read about Aristotle and you read about Plato and the development of what I would say intellectual thought, which I think hit its zenith in a couple thousand years ago in ancient Greece, when all of these forms of government were exposed. And of course, we live in a democratic republic here in the United States, and it's a little bit different version. It's a parliamentary government in Canada, but all of those are based on the foundational components from the Magna Carta, which actually date back to an earlier area in ancient Sumeria, which is Anaerabi, which was the foundational components. And the reality is that all organized forms of government eventually descend into some sort of chaos. And Aristotle was very concerned about the challenges of a democratic republic. And if you study the founding fathers, they had built all these checks and balances inside the constitutional arrangement because they knew that most democracies fall apart after 250 years. And of course, Winston Churchill was very famous for saying, all democracies, or democracy is the worst form of government until you compare it to everything else. And so first we have to suspend what we think we know. And in order to do that, we have to challenge our questions. We have to ask ourselves questions, both of ourselves and of the information we're getting. And then we need to take action and open up discussions with people with opposing views to find out if we can arrive through a meta-mind thing to some sort of reasonable conclusion. Now, here's what I've noticed. And we're lucky because we have the opportunity of what's called the freedom of speech, which is built into the constitutional amendment and the right to assemble. So, rewind the tape here. Sometime a few months ago, there was, quote unquote, a pandemic that broke out in another country, and our trusted authorities put forth that this was not a serious situation. It was a blip in the map, including the experts who are telling us that this is going to last forever and we're going to need viruses. And these are the very people who are telling us this wasn't going to make a big event or big impact in our lives as late as February of this year. And then suddenly their tune changed radically, that we turned over our rights and freedoms because of what was perceived as a mega crisis situations to humanity at large. Those medical authorities and experts then said to us that we needed to take part in the greatest experiment and most expensive experiment in human history, and that is locking down in their homes over 3 billion people in the planet in order to protect us from something which appeared at the time to be the most catastrophic viral infection to hit the human population since the Spanish influenza, which wiped out tens of millions, if not 100 million people around 100 years ago. Okay, you know what? In that situation, first and foremost, it really forces the hands of the people who are in power. It's a no-win situation. If they don't participate in the lockdown, when you understand exponential growth of a virally transmitted problem, every hour, every day is a problem. So yes, let's lock things down and shut things down as fast as we have to. We can figure out, we needed to buy some time to start asking questions, which did happen. Different governments responded in different ways. And what we started to see was a cross current of information. Now, as that information comes to light, the confusion increases exponentially. And the reality is, whatever you look at is, it's very hard to come to an accurate conclusion as an individual who is not a viral expert, who doesn't know the nuances, and who is attached to the various political spins which are coming out there about this entire thing. Here's what we do know. We've all experienced a massive loss of our personal freedom. That's an absolute certainty. There's no question about that. So now we're in a situation is each person has to evaluate, is the cost of protecting our most vulnerable people worth the expense of losing our personal freedom because of the statements of unelected officials who are holding our elective officials to what I call the proverbial scientific conjecturized gun to the head.
Hostage.
Exactly. So our professional leaders, our elected officials, in fact, are in a no-win situation. Whether it's the president, whether it's the governor, whether it's the mayor of your town or whatever, there's a no-win situation. No matter what decision they make in this situation, somebody is going to suffer serious consequences, whether that's the economic consequences that has been impacted from locking things down, or it's that somebody is going to lose their life because of that you didn't lock things down. And so the reality is we've got to take responsibility for our own choices, our own thoughts, and our own reasons. And guess what? We got to stop blaming our government officials. We've got to stop blaming our medical officers. And we got to start asking our questions. And instead of just believing whatever, we got to do our own research. And we got to sit around with other people and say, hey, let's ask some questions here. And so I laid out 25 different questions that I thought would be prudent to ask, such as, what does freedom mean? What does that mean to you? Who is the World Health Organization, and are they following the mandate that they are supposed to speak? The experts that have kind of hijacked our government, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Rose, Dr. Birx, what's their history? What's their track record? What's their position? Who's funding these messages? Who's funding the numbers? What are alternative voices to this, right? You know, why is the media's messaging so divisive? Why are they trying to invigorate and infuriate and activate and take a political position that is frankly unbalanced? It's unbalanced. You know, these type of questions, right? Why has the health of our citizens been actually politicized? Okay. And more importantly, why is voices who are going against, quote unquote, the standard information being shut down? And when we are seeing people who are voicing their opinions, which are against what's being promoted to the general population through the mainstream media sources, when they're being deplatformed, when they're being shut down, we have to ask ourselves, is the tyranny against our freedoms to assemble, our freedoms to free speech, our freedoms to go to our places of worship, our freedoms to take the risk of living, because living as a human is extremely risky, okay, is weighing the consequences of potential deaths of our population or most at-risk population worth giving up all the freedoms that we enjoy here in a quote-unquote free world? And I think what's happening now is we're coming to the conclusion of we need to ask ourselves those questions, and we need to take actions based on ourselves. And the reality is this: we're all going to die, every single one of us. Whether you go out the door and drive down the street in a car and get wiped out in a car accident, whether you catch a viral infection, whether you cultivate a disease in your life, whether you choose a pathway of recreational drug use or whatever that kills you, these are the options that are afforded to you as a human being on this planet having a human experience. And you cannot, and the one common element of tyranny throughout history, now I do believe that people should read, how did the Bolshevik revolution happen that ushered in communism? What are the consequences of Marxist and Leninist theories, and what happened? And read some of the excerpts from the Gulag Archipelago from Alexander Solzhenitsyn and how tyranny was put into place. Read the experts of the rise of fascism and Hitler. Read the experts of how Chairman Mao came to power in China. And read how hundreds of millions of people have died under the guise of protecting somebody and having other people rat on other people who are experiencing their rights and freedoms. Read about what happened to the Jewish people inside of Germany when their friends and neighbors were being hauled off to prison camps and they stayed put because, well, it wasn't me, so therefore I shouldn't take action. If you do not know the patterns of tyranny, if you do not know what's happened in history, if you do not know how people become paralyzed by taking a shrinking world that's quote unquote safe as opposed to taking the risks, then guess what? You have already given up your rights and freedoms. You've turned them over to, in this case, unelected authorities who are holding the guns to the head to our elected people, and we're blaming the people that have the gun to their head. And the reality is I think a lot of people have gotten soft, they've gotten weak, they've bought into they've bought into the idea that freedom is just something that is an inalienable right that happens to you. No. If you don't own your freedoms, your freedom to think, your freedom to speak, your freedom to act, guess what? Someone will take it away from you. Because the bottom line, if you look out through the history of humanity for thousands of years, it is just one psychopath after another trying to dominate the rest of the world for their idea. And we are faced with that situation on the planet. And the question is, it's not of how we're going to protect ourselves before we're going to die. It's how you're going to live before you die. And that's the question that every one of us can answer. And the reality is those who are at the most risk are going to have to take the precautions that they need to take. And they have to take ownership that this is where they are in their life. And it's up to them to take the precautions that they feel appropriate for them. But they also have to recognize is that it's other people's business to take the precautions that they think that is right for their lives. And they do not have the authority to stop other people from living their life the way that they want to live under the rights and freedoms. Because if we give that all up for the minority, we all lose in the long run. And those are the questions that I was inviting people to do, to make the choices that they need to make. If you want to lock yourself up in the house to the end of time and not go to work and blow out your economics because you think that's the right thing to do, power to you. But the second that you tell me that that's the way that I've got to operate my life, that's when we start to have a problem. And when we start using unelected authorities to use mathematical models that are quite sketchy, not replicable, and haven't even met the ones that they're purposing, and the people behind those have a financial information or a financial benefit to both the problems and the solutions, as well as the data that is generating those choices, it's time for us to stand up and ask questions about that. Because the bottom line at follow the money, and guess what? Generally, you're going to find what the agenda really is behind this. And I do believe that in this situation, there is an agenda going on that is taking well-meaning, well-minded people in a course that if we continue down that route, we're going to end up in a place that none of us want to be in. And I'm not accepting of that. I'm not accepting of that.
You know, brother, everything you just said makes me think of a couple of things. Number one, that I can't remember which one of our founders or who it was that said this, but they said the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. You know, in other words, we don't ever get to stop fighting for our freedoms. It's just like Sam Tran always says about, you know, the laws of nature, the survival of the fittest. You know, if you're not always working to protect yourself, to protect your family or whatever, to protect your freedom, that someone else is going to be more than happy to come in and take it away from you. And it's just like as a business owner, you know, if you've got a product that you're selling out there, whatever, if you're not taking care of your people, if you're not taking care of your customers, there's going to be somebody that's going to come in and go ahead and take care of them for you and take all your customers from you. And, you know, so in order to have the freedoms and the things that we desire, we have to be willing to be vigilant to protect them and continue to work for them. And then another one that comes to mind from everything you just mentioned was Helen Keller. I don't know how many people have heard this, but my nickname is actually Helen. Because I'm deaf and I'm blind. I can't see anything. I can't hear anything. And, but she said something that my wife actually showed me this statement, and we put it on one of our river rafting t-shirts. And I've spent 25 years river rafting and going out and risking my life against the river and that kind of thing and having a ball doing it. And, she said, security is mostly a superstition. It is not found in nature, nor do the children of men experience it as a whole. Avoiding danger in the long run is no safer than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. And I'll tell you what, I have taken that to heart throughout most of my life now. Every time I jump into my kayak and get ready to jump down through a class 5 rapid, I'm thinking about, this is a daring adventure, baby. And life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Let's go. And, so all those questions that you ask, they lead towards these things. And one of the problems we have out there is people think there is such thing as safety. They think there is such a thing as security. And, the big thing is be safe, be safe, be safe, be safe. Once you come to the realization that there's really no such thing and that you can be being as safe as can be, you can be following every protocol in the world, and all of a sudden, bam, you're toast, for something you could do nothing about.
Walk out to get the mail and you get drilled by a car,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I just want to tell you, Wade, I really love what you did with that video. I think that was fantastic. I shared it out. I'd love to share it out some more.
Please
I definitely would love to friend up with you so that when you're putting stuff out, that I know I sent you a friend request and a message to go along with it. And, if you could accept that, I'd sure appreciate it.
Sure, I will. I get a lot of them, so I'll just sort through them and get that. Yep.
Whenever I send out messages, and I want everybody to know, if for some reason you decide to send Wade a message through Facebook or a friend request, do him the courtesy of sending him a message and telling him why. Why did you send me? Because I've got probably 500 friend requests sitting in my friend request box that I'm never going to accept because they don't tell me why they sent me a friend request. And I really consider it a matter of common courtesy. It's like,
unless they're hot. They're hot. Just kidding.
But I just really appreciate what you're doing, Wade. We need more people like you. We need truth seekers out there uniting to get the truth out there, because, I've heard people say, well, that's your truth or that's my truth or whatever. And the truth of the matter is that there is no such thing as your truth or my truth. There's only the truth. And the truth is kind of like an ORP meter. It doesn't really care what you think or what I think or what anybody thinks. It just is what it is. And, the ORP meter, I always say, it doesn't care. It hasn't read no articles. It doesn't, whatever. It just measures electricity. And that's it. Plain and simple, And so I kind of think of truth as in the same aspect, in that it really doesn't have any bias. It just is what it is. And it will ultimately prevail where there is sufficient pains taken to bring it to life. And so that's one of my big goals in this world right now, especially, is to get the truth out there. And wherever it may be, whether it's something I agree with or disagree with, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the truth. And so I really appreciate people like you that are trying to do your best to get people to want to at least learn the truth by asking questions. And, your video that you did also compared to the way that you go about your Kangen water business, they're like perfectly matching, and I absolutely love it. And I can't tell you how thankful I am to have had you on the show today and shared all your wisdom with us today. And
I appreciate that. And I think it's important for everybody to realize is that we always have to entertain the possibility that we're wrong. And so if you don't continually ask questions of how you've come to a conclusion or challenge your own assumptions, then you guarantee to fall into his level of ignorance. And that ignorance will have dire consequences, especially if you're spreading it to those who you might care the most about. I think the other thing is like you said, is, life is a very fragile thing. The reality is all of us are born and all of us are going to die. And none of us know when that day is. None of us. But it's coming. It's like an inevitable freight train that I think that we hold back from. And life is a wonderful adventure, and it's a great gift to have this experience of separation and the consciousness experience. And nobody knows where we exactly came from, and nobody knows where they're going. There's a lot of theories, a lot of opinions, a lot of whatever. The question is what are you going to make out of the life that you live? And how do you choose to interact? And what I can say is, if you can continually ask those questions and remove the ignorance of ourselves, life becomes a beautiful, wonderful adventure. And when we start making a lot of assumptions based on a little information, life becomes a living hell. And so heaven or hell are a fraction of an inch apart. And you can change the whole thing around either way if you're willing to let go of the beliefs that you have and challenge them a little bit. And so I hope that I've been able to challenge some beliefs for people, or at least invite them to asking themselves the questions. Well, how long am I going to live? And how do I want to live? And what am I willing to accept and what am I not willing to accept? And how do I want to go through life? Do I want to go through life like a lion, or do I want to go through life like a sheep? And there is no wrong answer to that.
Right.
But where we always run into trouble is when we start thinking that because I've come to these conclusions, that everybody else needs to come to the same conclusions. And that is historically shown to be the source of all conflict in the world.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
Yeah.
So Wes, you've got something you wanted to say.
Yeah. No, I guess, you were talking earlier, having such a sound acumen for physiology and, the history you've gone through and how it applies to your athletes and how you've seen this water and such, do so many profound things on that. It kind of segues to today. There's so much out there in terms of, there's so many people out there that actually believe that the government, the medical industry, all of these entities, the pharmaceutical industry, are all responsible for their health. And that there's others that are really dialed into, well, I'm responsible for my own health. And so we kind of have this chasm. And I guess at the end of the day, with all the concerns, all the questions, all the worries, all the wondering, with so much information that's just conflicting, and it's like a pinball game on bonus round. It's just ping, ping, ping. Guys that we're trusting on a national CDC level are saying something in research, and then 2 days later they're on a microphone, they're saying it's 10 times worse than what their research was 2 days ago. So you get all of that, and I guess my question is, to address the physiological end of this whole approach to this pandemic, as it were, what role do you think, hydrogen, what role do you think, what we have plays in the personal accountability dimension of it, if any? Because, for me, all I know is that, look, I haven't been getting flu shots. I'm really not I don't want to deal with nothing with this vaccine. It's weird to me that this vaccine, we're all kind of hiding out until we get the vaccine, and that could be up to 18 months, and then we're going to get the vaccine for herd immunity, yet we're avoiding it now. So in the meanwhile, I have my own approach. I'm pounding. I'm trying to reduce oxidative stress the best way I can. I'm reducing inflammation at every level I can. How would you address that? I mean, I guess if that's a fair question as far as your approach to this on a health level while we're going through all this stuff. I mean, can you speak to that at any level, brother?
Sure. So if we look at the data that we are working at, is the people who are most exposed to the risk are the people who have compromised immune systems and the people that have pre-existing conditions, the people that are overweight, the people that have diabetes, the people who have lowered immune systems who are maybe living in homes and things like that. So the foundational component of your health and vitality is your responsibility, not your doctors, not your governments, not your medical researcher, and not Bill Gates. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. They have no business dealing with your health. But the second that you turn over your health autonomy to those people, you are, in my opinion, giving up your right to criticize what they think is right for you. Because you've acquiesced. Now, is there a place for pharmaceuticals in our world? Probably. Is there a place for surgeries and medical intervention? Definitely. Is there a place for maybe even vaccines for various conditions? Probably. The question is, if you look historically, so I'm kind of going around this a roundabout way because I want to address the first thing first. First and foremost, the ways to boost up your immune system have nothing to do with social distancing. They have nothing to do with staying indoors. They have nothing to do with any of that. In fact, and using all this antibacterial and antiseptic and putting masks on our face. All of those things absolutely will negatively impact your immune system function. Plain and simple. All of those things, all of the suggested recommendations that are coming to us will definitely lower your personal immunity to everything. Flus, viruses, all that sort of stuff. So what we have to do is, I'll share what I'm doing, and if people want to know that, that's great, because I've looked at it from every which way, and then I'll get to the other part of it in a second, which I opened up the door. Number one, I go outside and get as much sunshine a day. I'm walking. I left California before this happened, as it started to look that way, because I kind of intuited where it was going. I went to Arizona, which has a lot more freedom. I had the good value to do that because on a state-to-state rate, it's one thing. And I'm able to get out where there's a lot of sunshine here in the desert in Sedona. So I'm spending approximately 3 hours in the sunshine today because that boosts up vitamin D, and that's one of the best things for your immune system, getting out in the fresh air, getting out in the nature, getting out in the sunshine. And guess what? I'm still social distancing. I got videos of it. It's 5 miles before I see some person. So I'm doing that, number one. Number two, I am taking high dosages of vitamin C every day. I'm taking vitamin A every day. I'm taking all my B vitamins every day. I'm taking magnesium every day inside my body. I'm drinking my Kangen water every single day to keep that. I'm exercising every single day. I'm doing intermittent fasting on alternate days. So I eat for 8 hours, I eat for 12 hours, and then I fast for 36 hours because it boosts BDNF, brain neurotropic factor, that I can see and clear and think clear. I'm not eating the processed foods. I'm not eating the contaminated products. I'm taking a wide breadth of information that I'm taking in. I'm taking the extreme right. I'm taking the extreme left. I'm looking at the scientific research. I'm looking at the mathematical models. I'm looking at the economic models. I'm gathering as much information. And I didn't make any statements about this for the first few weeks, as I gave myself the time to do the things that I knew that would boost my immune system, which I talked about in the Awesome Health Program. You can watch that, give that away for free if you don't know it. Second thing, I took on as much information as I could get before I could come to the determination for my own self. And once I come to that determination, respectfully share the questions that I asked to other people who were looking to come to a question without saying, hey, you need to believe this or you need to do that. These are the questions that I asked myself. These are the actions that I took to myself. These are the behaviors I took to myself to give myself the best fighting chance. Those are the conclusions that I've come to. And I believe that right now we're in a situation where the economic the response is without a doubt worse than the threat. The consequences
so
of what
reaction,
what's that?
The reaction of fear is actually worse and more contagious than the virus?
Yeah, well, if you look at brain physiology, so I study neurobiology because how is it that we actually come to how do we come to the physiological components of how we actually come to a conclusion? And we have something at the bottom of our brain called the amygdala, which is the emotional center, which is designed to make short-term decisions based on fear. And so that's like the fight or flight response, which activates our perception capabilities. And then we have another chain, and that goes into the memory campus, the hippocampus, and all this sort of stuff. And there's a great flow chart in, I believe, in Power versus Force by Dr. Hawkins about actually showing how brain physiology. And when you become fearful, you actually, your prefrontal cortex, which separates humans from the animal species, now becomes a tool of that brain, and you start taking actions that seem rational and reasonable but aren't, because you're just coming up with conclusions that are based in fear. So almost across the board, any long-term decision that's made in an environment of fear is almost always shown to be the wrong conclusion to the information that's being presented.
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost, it's universal. And do not underestimate large parts of populations who will buy into falsehood and send hundreds of millions of people to their death. World War II was the last evidence of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people bought into a falsehood. A lot of people died because of it, and the world was never the same. We're inside of one of those situations. The final piece I'll ask is, and this is just a reasonable question. Right now, we're seeing a guy by the name of Bill Gates who is becoming the de facto expert on viruses. He funds the institutions that are giving us the education that is somewhat shoddy. And he's the guy that is out there purporting these totalitarian, tyrannical responses to the proposed illness or disease. Well, here's what I do know about him. I don't know Bill Gates personally. I know that he built one of the most influential digital companies in the world by being an absolute ruthless business leader, to the point of almost a psychopath. I also know that he never created the program, that MS-DOS. He got that from someone else. He brokered a deal. So he is first and foremost a salesman, and he's second and most an entrepreneur. And he produced a product that was filled with viruses and still is today. And he's been doing that for 30 years. And each year he introduces a new version of his program to deal with the viruses that he had before and sells you that program again. He's not a virologist. He's not a medical doctor. And he's built a system and a track record that has showed that he promotes virally infected software and sells you the new software to deal with the virally infected software the next year.
Yeah.
That tells me everything I need to know. That's he is also a person who has been on the record for saying that we can control the population through the eugenics movement by the use of vaccines. He said that. Yeah. He also presented that the world's not ready for a pandemic in Event 201, that he distributed widely to the most economically influential people at the Davos Symposium, the World Economic Forum. So I'm not saying that he's right or that he's wrong or he's a terrible person or he's whatever. What I'm saying is based on the 30 years of observing this person with my limited amount of information, I don't trust the information that he's purporting. I don't entrust his motives. I don't entrust his process. And what I can say for sure is the suggestions that he's putting forth has absolutely compromised the rights and freedoms that are protected under our constitutional agreements, which the people of this country at one point in time, 250 years ago, were willing to lay down their lives in order to protect.
Yeah.
That should tell you something. And so everybody can make their choice and do what they want to. And I'm respectful of whatever choice a person chooses to make or whatever information they choose to believe. I would say, based on the information I'm presented, I can't trust that information. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right. And I'm going to make the choices that I can. I am practicing social distancing where I go. I am respectful for the people who are choosing that's a modality, but I'm also mindful of the consequences. And right now, the economic consequences are absolutely crushing this country in way and the world at large. And prosperity, both in health and in your finances and in your spirituality, is what gives us the freedom to experience the best of life. And anytime we take those away from people, we are definitely impacting the quality of their life, even if that quality of life has been shortened. So do you want a long life living in fear, conjecture, and confinement? Or would you rather have a short life built with love, joy, freedom of expression, and freedom of association?
Yeah. Yeah.
Choose.
Yeah.
Amen, brother. Man, I love it. I so much appreciate you coming in here today. This has been a
very much so
wealth of information, and I am so grateful that you were willing to do this with us today. And I look forward to conversing more with you and learning from you, and maybe even potentially teaching you something or whatever. I mean, we're all here to help each other learn and to teach each other and everything that we find that can help other people. And that's what's so crazy awesome about the Kong family, is that, like Daniel DiMicali said, this is a personal development program with a compensation plan attached to it. And I've developed so much over the last 3 years up here in ways that I never even comprehended, because of my involvement with this company and the incredible people that are involved with it. Some of the greatest people that I've ever known in my life. I consider them my family. Anybody that buys a Kong machine, they're part of the Kong family. But, and so I like to have a lot of fun with what I do too, but there's also room and time for seriousness. There's time for faith. And I just really love that you took the time to come here today. And I'd really like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to end this show with a short prayer.
Sure.
And so I'm going to give that prayer, and then we'll do our normal ending to the show that we always do. Our dear Father in heaven, we thank you so much for today. We thank you for the blessing of Mr. Lightheart and bringing him into our lives and allowing him the ability to gain the wisdom that he has and be willing to come and share it with us. We ask that you will help people that get to see this message as it goes out across the world in the coming days, weeks, months, that they will have open minds, that they will have the ability to take the time and the desire to learn, that they will have the discernment to figure out whether it's true or not, or to have the desire to investigate, to look closely at the things that are being put out there right now. Lord, we're in a very interesting time in our lives right now. And the big question should be for everybody is, are we going to go towards freedom, or are we going to go towards tyranny? And Lord, I believe that the direction you would prefer that we go is towards freedom. And that's the direction that we hope to be able to go, towards freedom, towards health, towards spirituality. And we ask that you will help us to continue to spread the truth wherever it may lie, regardless of how it may contradict what we believe, that we will fight for the truth, that we will seek the truth, that we will pray for the truth, that we will get after the truth and share it everywhere that we possibly can, and that we ask that we will help people's eyes and minds open to the messages that we're sharing. We asked all these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, my Savior. Amen. So,
Giddy up.
you know, it's so interesting how good it feels to pray. And that's something that until I got involved with the Condon family and started learning the things that I've learned over the last 3 years, that I actually decided that prayer was worth it, that I needed to do it. And, you know, it's because of fellow members of the Kong family that I've decided to put a short prayer in at the end of every show from now on, because we need our Creator's blessings, and whoever your Creator is, that's fine. Whoever, you know, it's whoever it is. But one thing's for sure, it's not government. Government is not your Creator. That's one thing I do know. I don't know exactly who, and I know what I believe, but, you know, to each their own. And, but I do know for a fact that government is not our Creator. And they're not our protector, and that's our job. And so, you know, we are the Khan family, kids, and we are here to change the world. And a lot of people think that's an insane goal, but we don't, because we see worlds change every single day. And Sean, how is it again that we're doing that?
Well, I like to surmise and share that it's one glass of hydrogen-rich, oxygen-saturated, supremely hydrating Conga 9.5 at a time. Thank you kindly for asking.
Amen, brother. One lightning bolt in a box, one incredible guest, one informative show, one amazing family, one amazing person at a time. So kids, get out there, change the world, starting with your own. And of course, especially right now, right here, right in this day and age, when you can't get a hug from anybody else, you gotta give yourself a hug. Kids, do not forget your hugs. Do not forget your booty hoos. Let those babies rip. They feel good. And so, Wade, thank you once again, brother. Really appreciate it. I look forward to hopefully this stuff all loosening up, and we get to have our Nagic convention down there in Las Vegas here coming up in September. And we get to actually have a real hug. But for now, you'll just have to settle for this and a hooty hoo, because that's what hooty hoo is. It's a verbal hug, baby, amongst all the other things that it accomplishes. And it's a unique little spot in the language of the world.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Have yourself a great day.
Yeah. Thank you, Wade T. Lightheart. God bless you. Thanks for joining us, man. Continue on your mission. Godspeed and all you do, my man. And look forward to checking you on the backside when we run into each other again.
Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Got it. Okay.
Love you guys. Bye for now.
Giddy up.